Hi, my name is Bal Dhillon. This presentation reviews a case study titled Communication Failures. It shows how poor and ineffective communications can lead to project failures and have a negative impact on successful project execution. This case study identifies a subject matter expert with a PhD named Herb, who had been with the company for 8 years working in research and development and product enhancement projects. Herb was used to working independently and interacting mainly at team meetings. Herb's company had won a 2-year contract for R&D and for manufacturing. Herb was identified as the project manager for the project. However, Herb did not have the project management credentials, and with his limited interaction and minimal communication, there were deemed risks in assigning Herb the project manager. Nonetheless, the executive thought he was the right person for the job. His team consisted of 14 people, with 4 of them being involved directly with Herb on a consistent basis. They were Alice, Bob, Betty, and Frank. Alice was responsible to coordinate the efforts of the R&D personnel. Bob was responsible to coordinate engineering and drafting. Betty was responsible for the reports, record management, and procurements, and Frank was responsible for the manufacturing engineers. Alice, Bob, and Frank had been with the company for a period of time, whereas Betty was new to the company. Team meetings were held every Friday for 1 hour. There are three questions which will now be reviewed specific to this case study. Number 1. How important are communication skills in project management? Communication skills are very important in project management. As per Raj Kumar, nothing is more important to the success of a project than effective communication. It is an essential tool. The project manager is expected to be the leader for the project and would be responsible to ensure formal communication plans are established and follow appropriate project management strategies, which include closing the communication gap around business benefits, tailoring communications to different stakeholder groups, acknowledging the value of project management, including project management communications, and using standard project communication practices and using them effectively. Effective communication maximizes the potential for successful projects and minimizes potential risks. Without communication skills in project management, there is a danger of missing the deliverables or other outcomes required by the sponsor. Question 2. Was Herb the right person to be assigned as the project manager? Even though Herb's knowledge specific to project management was limited, he certainly had a lot of relevant experience and knowledge pertaining to R&D as well as manufacturing, which was a requirement for this particular job. Herb was a subject matter expert in R&D and manufacturing. Because Herb was used to working independently, what Herb needed to do was understand the project management communication process and all of the relevant factors. He needed to understand the importance of clear, verbal, and written communication. He needed to involve the right people from the departments and be able to identify challenges and be prepared to resolve them. He needed to appreciate the demand for communications and identifying the 5 W's, which includes who needs to be communicated to, what needs to be communicated, when it should be communicated, where it should be communicated, why communication of information is essential, and to what level is important, and how the communications need to be done. He would also need to determine any communication obstacles. Question 3. There were communications issues with Alice, Bob, Betty, and Frank. For each communication issue, where was the breakdown in communications? Lack of effective communication led to issues with this group of people. The communication model requires understanding how communication moves from one person to another. The communication model involves several parts, which includes having a sender who first initiates the communication. There is an encoder, which refers to how the message is understood. There is a medium or message channel, which is a method used to deliver the message between the encoder and the decoder. There is a receiver, which refers to the people or a person receiving the final communication, and the final component is called feedback. In this case study, there were communication gaps between the 4 essential team members and Herb. Alice was unclear on her ask of Herb for the letter of recommendation. Herb was not able to decode the discussion with Alice. Bob expected documentation for changes to his engineering team tasks, and Herb did not involve Bob, so the medium or channel was not used efficiently. Betty misunderstood the direction that she received from Herb and purchased raw materials in advance. Herb didn't encode his message clearly to Betty, and Betty didn't provide clear feedback on her action either. and Frank thought that Herb was not including him on important decisions which impacted his essential tasks. Herb didn't involve Frank in the procurement discussion, and this breakdown in communication involved encoding and decoding. To be an effective communicator, a project manager needs to make sure that the messages are clear, concise, accurate, and well planned. This will avoid misunderstanding and ensure that they get through each stage of the communications process seamlessly. These are the references for this presentation, and I thank you for listening.